The Building Better Business podcast is the best place to learn how to take your business to the next level. It's no longer enough to earn good profits. You need to develop a network of connections as well as use all types of marketing to your advantage that will put you over the edge. Hosted by me, Steve Eschbach, a financial executive with decades of experience in dealing with businesses and business people, we'll learn how this all comes together. Join me and my expert guests as we delve into the many facets of owning the business and how to become a good, caring business owner. Listen how making a difference in your community can attract all sorts of clientele, which in turn will build you a better business. Greetings of the day, my fellow listeners. This is Steve Eschbach. I am your host for another edition of Building Better Businesses. I am also a business broker. I own a franchise called Royal Business Advisors here in Naperville, Illinois, about 40 miles west of downtown Chicago. Transworld is the largest and fastest growing business brokerage in the world. We predominantly assist small to medium-sized companies confidentially sell their businesses and match them with qualified buyers. So for this edition of Building Better Businesses, I'm delighted to have Raul Hernandez Ochoa, who is a business strategist, coach, and a consultant. And he has multiple areas of focus, if you will. I'm going to let him A, identify his business, and B, identify his focus on how he helps his clients. So first of all, Raul, thank you so much for your time today. And let's learn a little bit about you from where you are today.
Well, thank you for having me. Where I'm at today in business is helping entrepreneurs create certainty in their business so that they can continue to grow and also focus on other areas of their life that's important to them.
So how the heck do you get business owners create certainty? I've never been able to master that. Tell me how you do that.
I'm not sure if mastering is the right word, right? It's an art that we're always building upon, right? It's like building muscle, building knowledge. But it's something it's a feeling that I can convey with business owners once they start to have like a grasp around everything happening under their business, the communications, the team, the structure, the growth. There creates a sense of certainty and confidence, and that boosts confidence in other areas of life so that they can focus with their families, their communities, or if they're just focusing on, making a greater impact with their business. So it's been a fun ride, but we're still getting started.
So I get a sense is that the certainty you focus in on is that with which you can control. The extenuating circumstances, of course, are always changing, and we all are accustomed to that, but you try to develop and help your clients get that certainty needed to put your arms around all that going on around us, right?
Correct. And I really like that you focused on the areas of control, because that's the key focus that I break down with clients per se. Like we use like a simple matrix or a simple sheet to identify what are the core metrics, the operating metrics, I call them the operating KPIs, that we control within our business that influence either top line or bottom line revenue. But these are attributed to specific habits, not actions, because habits in every single business are done by the owner, someone else, or a machine. And then how can we create the better habits associated to that one KPI and create operational excellence to really fine tune on very specific aspects, not like 100 things, maybe 9 or 12 things within the business to move the needle and create additional momentum.
So we're taking a little different track there. We're going to focus a little bit more on the current. We're going to go back in time shortly. But while you're talking about all this, I know you've got a book, Productive Profits. I know you got a blog, Daily Spark. And then you've got a podcast yourself called Do Good Work. So tell me a little bit how all those intertwine with your clients. And again, the ultimate objective, at least from what I'm hearing from you, is to help you develop the certainty to control the external factors that are changing.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you asking about that. It's the first time someone's asked about the blog, but specifically for me, I started that for myself to get my thinking into writing on a daily basis, or at least a Mondays to Friday basis. And then from there, it's inspiring entrepreneurs to be able to look what they're already seeing in their business from a different light. We live in with the TV, the radio, the news, and all that stuff going on. Like we need to be focusing on the good within our business and the things that we can control. So my hope with the Daily Spark is to just ignite a small little spark, less than a minute a day, for entrepreneurs and business owners. And that attributes to the work that we're doing, the greater work that we're doing with business owners on a hands-on basis. The Do Good Work podcast also supports that because we talk about very specific tactics or strategies from people who've actually walked the walk, bringing them in, sharing their experience and tactical action items that can support business owners, or even if you're working in your career, how you can become better every single day. And the book, Productive Profits, is pretty much the capstone. And we're actually celebrating 1 year anniversary of the publication of that book. So it's pretty exciting to see that. But the book is essentially the framework that I work with clients hands-on. There's nothing left out of it. It's a strict framework where we talk about creating clarity in regards to your vision and the mission of the business, creating the evergreen flows that create the structure, the growth, and then synchronizing that within your day-to-day activities. So the book is pretty much like a handbook for business owners to walk through and implement step by step.
So we went through a tumultuous last year with COVID-19, but does your book have the basic tenets that would be applicable regardless of the extremes that we had in the past year? So are there basic things you're going to do no matter what the environment is, or has that changed as a result of the pandemic?
That's a great question. I focus on principles, so principles that never change. From those principles, we can stem different strategies and tactics. So I focus on the core essentials. And thankfully, with the framework, it's built to be dynamic. I've been able to apply principles from that book from just the solopreneurs here in town in San Diego to companies with over 100 team members. So it's flexible in its growth, but the principles still apply.
That sounds good. That sounds real good. So we're already a few minutes into this podcast, and normally I would have taken you down memory lane by now, but I was so excited to hear about your current developments. I wanted to get that covered first, but now we got to go back in time, Raul. So you were born and raised somewhere, and you had some upbringing, some of which you developed on your own. I'm sure some of which had some influence from either parents or family. So tell me a little bit about your childhood. You mentioned San Diego, which is where you are today. Were you born and raised there, or where was that?
Born in Mexico, raised in San Diego. So we lived here in San Diego. And I think a huge, looking backwards and from all the books that I read, continue to read as many books as I can. I think the positive encouragement that my parents always had to support me has been a huge foundation stone, as well as my wife, to not, even though I might do crazy things here and there, but she definitely keeps that support as well. So the growing up, I've always wanted to do animation and graphic design. I was pretty good at that at high school. And what's crazy, right? We're not talking about focusing on the tactical side of business, but that's what I was doing back with when I still had my AOL email, would focus on trying to get, I think it was DreamWorks, the animation director or a manager, to give me tips. How do I get into the industry? That took a twist when I was in community college, and I learned about a business here in town over at San Diego State. And it was a sunglass company, and they were giving 10% of their proceeds to fund cataract surgery for those in need. The cool part about it is it was built by students just like me. And for me, that was a bit of a pivotal moment, because I understood, wow, students down the street just like me are creating something that makes a difference in the world. And whatever difference that was, that company went on to be a success. I got to meet the owner. She's amazing. And she mentored me in the beginning to show me how the purpose, the values within a business and an organization. From there, I guess I focused on trying to create something. And I don't know, I've just always been wanting to create. And that's what took off to do good work, productive profits, and the work that we're at today. So it's just taking action every single day.
So based on what I'm hearing you say, you're a little bit different than some of my other guests. So a few of my other guests were corporate executives that moved into the entrepreneurial space. I get a sense that your entrepreneurial spirit started early, and you may have never had a corporate job. Is that right?
I did. Actually, when I first started my first company with a buddy of mine in New York, I was working a corporate job with JP Chase Bank, and I was waking up around 4 a.m. every single day to work on the business, go to work, and then hustle, and then start getting clients overseas, and it was pretty fun.
What did you do at JP Chase?
It was relationship banking I grew up there pretty much from community college all the way to after post-college. So just banking side.
So you said you had an interest in animation. Was that entire schooling? Was that in high school and college? Was that all animation, or get into marketing or business, or what did it evolve into back then?
When I first learned, so I was going to school for psychology first. And then when I learned about Solo Eye, where the sunglass company that inspired, that changed everything. So I applied to a program called the Lavin Program at SDSU. Usually for school credits, it gives you 1 credit, which is nothing compared to everything else. But that program was my college experience. I got to hang out and learn how to paddleboard with the co-founder of Volcom, be in the same room with Ralph Rubio, be able to go to meetings with the CEO of Costco. So just being exposed early on showed me that this was a path, and that path you can pave your own way. And it's not easy, but at least getting exposure early on definitely made it, hey, this is possible.
Absolutely. So as you move from JP Morgan Chase to your consulting business right now, were there any other interim stops before where you are today? Or did it go from your corporate job to where you are and then that blossomed into something bigger?
So it started with consulting on marketing. So we were trying to start a software company back out of college. So we're trying to start a software company, didn't turn out to software. The market needed marketing. So we started creating marketing services. That took off, but then we were starting to create something where we didn't feel comfortable with. It was the quote unquote agency model where we were going to hire people and have them do the work. And then for us, I think it wasn't a good fit, a founder market fit. So then I went to go and support other digital marketing companies to grow. And my biggest experience was helping a company grow from 7 people to 23 in a year. And I think we almost tripled revenue that year. So they're doing well now, multi-million-dollar company. But that's where I really took everything that I've learned and all the things that I've applied from the book. And it was pretty fun. It's still growing. But a mentor at the time told me, you got to put this into writing. So that's where the book sprung out.
So you talk a bit about scaling businesses. So when you interact with clients, you're going to help them do that, create a way to handle some certainty as part of your processes and whatnot. So what are you finding is common, and I'm not going to call them mistakes because I have vowed that I will never create another mistake. I will have many learning experiences, but I will never do another mistake. But what are you finding that is fairly common with the business clients that you deal with the executives that you coach? Is there something that seems to resonate more frequently than others, or is it all over the lot?
That's a great question. I like to focus on smaller business, quote unquote. So they're doing anywhere between $1 to $10 million in revenue. That's for me a sweet spot. It's fun. Anything that you can do there really creates a difference and makes a good impact. I think like a roadmap that we can look at is I always look at the pricing and the positioning of the product and making sure like, is the pricing going to support the operations and the expenses? Because I focus a lot on the service-based businesses, and a lot of services are based on labor-intensive expenses. So we need to make sure that that meshes together. And then once we do that, we can start positioning, like if we're going to double or triple pricing, how are we positioning in the marketplace? How can we make sure that we have the right clients coming in? How does operations fulfill? So I think it's always looking at the sales and marketing piece first, taking it to the operations side and understanding how are we going to fulfill on that, making sure that it's efficient, that the team is built correctly for scale. That's one of the initial pieces too, is to find out the organizational, not an org chart, but I call them task units to create kind of like a triad so that we can scale a team as needed without scaling costs and being able to be more efficient with that. That plus leadership, I think, is the key. Those are the key 3 aspects that I've seen transcend across clients.
You talked a little bit about pricing and, being a business broker, I know that pricing is critical. Usually the owners want maybe perhaps what above the market would bear, and, buyers will always offer way below what they think. But it just in general, in terms of pricing, there's always a discomfort. If you're running a service business, I'm not talking about buying and selling businesses now, I'm talking about selling your services. And they're usually, I think, and maybe I'm wrong, there usually is a hesitancy to raise prices. But I think what I'm hearing you say that if your services are worth the increased price, you should be able to do that and still be able to scale. Am I hearing that right? And what am I missing in your explanation? Help us out.
That's correct. You're right, because you do have to look at the value that you're in. Like, you can't just decide to raise prices 3 times and then just call it a day. You need to look at the value that you're delivering for the specific target market. I'll give you a good example. One of my clients, a good friend of mine, he's actually in the podcasting space, but we started focusing on a very specific industry that he has A, market knowledge, 2, relationships, 3, he can add a ton of value because he's done it in the past and like changed businesses, changed like that guy's life. Right. So when we look at that, we attribute what is the value being added? What is the opportunity cost for them not getting this value? And how can we position ourselves where it's 1, a no-brainer, 2, and make it positions us well in the market, and 3, we can still get them the results that we need and scale our team at the same time. So we need to look at all those 3 different things and also get into the psychology of the market. How do they currently buy? What do they think about pricing? What's their current average expenses? And what's their psychological and demographical attributes? When you think about those things, coming up with a price position is not easy, but it's kind of like a logical chain of events.
It's interesting that you mentioned psychology in your commentary. And when I first started business brokering, you would think, and many would think, that is purely mathematical, purely formulaic. So you get a market comp, this one sold at this price, you get the current market, this one's listed at this price. You would think that mathematics, and I'm being very simple when I say this, mathematics would drive decision making. But you mentioned psychology, and what I've learned over the past 3 or 4 years, that emotion plays a big factor in most anything that you do. Buying and selling a business, of course, someone who created a legacy, they don't want to give it up. They do want to give it up because they want to do other things, but they don't want to give it up, so to speak. So there's probably a great deal of psychology and emotion as a business owner. There's certainly an emotion with a customer because you're playing to that. What else can you describe? I would guess that your psychology background plays a huge part in the success that you've had in consulting and advising.
I think that, and also being able to relate with people. And like, I think you wrote an article on LinkedIn around you're in the people business. No matter what you're doing, it's transference of emotion. And that's that's old Zig Ziglar telling us, like, that's all selling is. It's you're transferring an emotion. They have to feel that emotion, and they make the decision based on the emotion. They make rational statements to say, hey, I made the right choice. But it's definitely an art and a skill at the same time. Because you're right, the deal might make 100% sense. It might make but there's also that nostalgia. We're human, right? We're not just machines, which is part of the game. That's part of like us making sure that we support each other and like being, like you mentioned, in the business. You're in the business of people.
The people you work with, I've found, and you could probably agree with this statement and add your own story to it, but I think if you pay more attention to listen, learn, and respond as opposed to telling, that'll go a long way. Too many business owners, and they're very, the newer entrepreneurs, they want so much to sell their wares and tell them about their services. They don't respond. They don't listen to what the pain points are. They don't listen and learn what they really need to respond accordingly. I think you could probably share a couple of stories with respect to that.
Yeah, I think that's really key, because when you're doing that, it's almost like you're asking them, give me the roadmap so that I can best assist or help you. And even going back to like the pricing example, it's having the other person tell you their story and then position it where you can help them be the winner of their story. Not that you are the prize. They are the prize. You're a guide. And I think that's I think Donald Miller talks about that in Story Brand, but it's essentially, how can we make our users, our team, this is including our teams, but also our customers, how can we make them and encourage their customer journey, their journey with us, and how can we support and facilitate that? Because one of the things that I've seen, especially with companies as they keep growing, is that you're in the people business, but you're motivating and you're just allocating resources appropriately. Once you get to a certain position, you're motivating with vision, you're motivating with drive and goals, making sure that the team knows those goals, the values, and attributing back to your company, but as well as, transference of emotion. Because when you have that, there's a unique, internally it's called a culture within your business. But then when you're talking to customers, it's your brand story and your positioning to the marketplace. So there is that human element that I don't think we'll ever leave out in business.
And unfortunately, too many people ignore that, and that's a critical component. You talked a little bit about your ideal client being 1 to 10 million. You talked about the services industry. What else? What else is there to your ideal client? What type of services does your consulting best work with, or your best practices work with?
I think that's a really good question. I think teams that implement quickly is one of the key things that I've noticed that can get the most value from the work that we do together. Because if it takes 4 weeks to make an action, then at the speed that I work with clients, it's not going to be a good fit. I usually do sprints with clients initially to engage and understand, their velocity is what I call, from idea to implementation, their values, making sure that we can support them. And then from there, we can look at different avenues of engagement, either more one-on-one engagement or either support over an annual term. I'm actually working on a program right now to give pretty much the framework is great, but give more tactical, more practical video lessons related to the book, but more applicable to businesses where they can plug and play, and give support over a year. So I find that you can give the information, you can tell how to, but the support of how do I actually do this today, or would this scenario happen? How do I apply this specific scenario to my business? I know that entrepreneurs fail to understand that businesses are like 95% the same, just like our human bodies, like the anatomy is almost, I think the 6 or 5, I think carbon atoms are, don't quote me on this, identically the same. So the businesses are no different. It's how you feel the business, how you drive the business, and the vision and the purpose that makes you extremely unique. So it's being able to apply these principles to your unique use case over time where you can see lasting results.
So I hear that you like to kind of move quickly. How do you deal with one of your clients who may be a little resistant to taking that fast action that I think you want to encourage them with and give them the confidence that they can do it successfully, even though it might be uncomfortable for them? How do you do that?
It's all about encouraging. It's all about working with what are their thoughts around it and why are they behaving in the way that they're behaving, and being on their corner of the ring, as I like to say, being rooting for them, cheering for them, but also not letting them do less than I know that they can do and that they know they can do. So it's almost that encouraging part. That's where the coaching aspect comes in. But it's just honestly down to earth, one-on-one, being human to human and saying, hey, let's actually do this because you're capable of it. You know you're capable of it. Let's just step into it and take action. And showing them first with the team and creating leverage is the key indicator. Like, oh, wow, it's actually possible. If it's possible, then I can do it.
Right. So you've mentioned that the basic principles are primarily the same for you to scale, but is there anything that happened in the past year that either kind of shifted that temporarily or shifted that permanently? Like, is there anything pandemic related? Like, for example, when I do my business, a lot of the first meetings were always in person. Now the first meetings might be virtual, and then you follow up with an in-person meeting. That was a pandemic related change in business brokering. And I think that's going to stay no matter what. But we are definitely going to have that face-to-face meeting to get the buyer and the seller comfortable with the process. Anything in what you do that may have either temporarily shifted and may come back, or maybe has permanently shifted that you need to kind of adapt the basic principles? I don't think you're changing them radically. I think you might be altering or modifying. Am I saying that kind of correctly? And have you experienced that?
That makes a lot of sense. Thankfully, I was remote since 2016. So this is, I'm used to this, but like I do have friends who've had to shift or pivot their business or even shut down previous business and start new ones because like they were in the event industry and that took a hit. I also, from some of the marketing companies that I help, they service multiple clients in multiple industries. We saw different impacts from the pandemic with real estate for renting as well as for event-based stuff. So there is that shift that we have to do. I find it now we're almost seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and people are having cabin fever. They want to get back out there. I think one of the biggest things that, like, thankfully with the podcast too, like you do your podcast, I do my podcast. That's a huge networking tool, and leveraging that and being able to provide value to the audience at the same time. So there's that component where you don't have to stop networking. You may not go to events as much as you used to. You may not drive to your office, but you can still practice the same principles, just doing it more digitally, but never forgetting the human element about it as well. I don't have a clear story of a loss in regards to that, but I do know of friends and other businesses here in town that have experienced that, but they're also pivoting and shifting, and that'd be an amazing story to talk about, like how their mindset was affected when this happened and how they transitioned and took action to create something new and now be thriving within the same time frame. I think that endurance, that persistence is something that is found in very strong entrepreneurs, but I know that that's something very unique.
Yeah, and that being able to quickly respond. So it goes back to one of my mantras: you got to listen, learn, and leverage, or listen, learn, and leverage and respond. But you have to stay in tune with what's going on around you. I mean, your principle, as I hear it, is to create certainty around something that's always changing. So if you come back to that, I think that's how you can scale. Is that right?
That's true. And I love that because you're listening, you're paying attention, you're making the right decisions. Because what is strategy besides just making the right decisions based on the right data? And listening is a form of acquiring that data to make the next best action or foresee the next best 3 to 5 actions.
Absolutely. Well, Raul, unfortunately, we're nearing the end of our time. We talked about a lot. Is there anything that we may have missed that you want the audience to take away that may not have been covered with any of my questions today?
No, I think you asked a really good holistic approach. We did touch about in the beginning in regards to creating certainty. The matrix or the spreadsheet that I use with clients is actually available online at dogoodwork.io/essentials, essentials with an S plural. And you'll be able to get that with the training and be able to kind of look at your business from a 30,000 foot view and see which actions attribute to the key performance indicators that I can control and how can I create operational excellence through those habits and those actions. It's all there. It's a simple sheet, a simple matrix that we use, and it can make a difference in your business.
Well, that sounds essential. Having a template to work with, being able to write it down, being able to have it visible every day in front of you, that's probably critical to building success and building scale, like you said. So where do we go find out more information? You gave us a little bit regarding your Do Good Work. How else can we find more about Raul?
The best place is the website, dogoodwork.io. You'll be able to check out the podcast, connect with me personally, and be able to read any of the content that we produce.
That's great. Thank you so much, Raul, for your time. Thank you, audience, for listening. Follow up with Raul if there's anything else that you got out of this podcast that you think will help you out. I'm sure he will also do the same if you give him a call or check him out online. So thanks again, Raul. This was great. I appreciate you sharing your insights.
Thank you, Steve.